Well, God bless you, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight on another episode of Origins. We're getting the audio and visual right. We're not polished, so we're just trying to figure this out. We got dogs walking in, kids walking in. But we are so privileged and thankful to have the Reverend George Hurt and Sister Natasha Hurt with us tonight.
I'm not Reverend.
You're not Reverend.
No. There's only one that bears that title, Reverend. That's God Almighty.
He's already corrected me. This isn't the first time this has happened. He corrects me constantly. You got to have friends in your life that can do that. I'm not going to tell you what he did to me on my birthday a couple of years ago. He told me I was 60-something years old. I just about wrecked a car. We were driving somewhere to preach. Where were we going?
I have no idea.
We're in the middle of Illinois. It's like 10 o'clock at night. It's my birthday. And we're talking on the phone. Oh, it's your birthday. And yeah. What are you, 62, 63? I just about wrecked the car. But that's the friendship that we have.
How old are you?
How many times did I talk about this, Brother Hurt? I'm younger.
He's old.
I'm younger than you are. I'm 48.
Old, so you're like the oldest friend I got.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that because you probably don't keep friends around that long. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us live on Facebook. We are streaming. If you don't mind, if you're watching, just share and like this. Get the live stream out there as far and wide as you can. So as you come onto the live stream, I'll mention it a couple times throughout. Just share the live stream because we want as many people as possible to be exposed to their ministry, their story, and what's going on here tonight. We've been friends for a while now. I guess we probably met 5 or 6 years ago, I believe.
Parkway.
At Parkway, Madison, Mississippi. You came and preached for us and did a magnificent job. That was kind of a notable few services for us. You did speak some things into my life that night, but most notably for us and our family, it was the first night you exhorted that night and imparted some things into our young people. And that was the first time in our daughter Lauren's life that she was used in the gifts of the Spirit. Is he making fun of me again?
No, we got to look at the camera.
Okay.
That was the first time in our daughter Lauren's life that she was using the gifts of the Spirit in tongues and interpretation. And your ministry had a large part in activating that in her life. So from the very beginning, you had a special place with us. It doesn't take a real depth to discern what's real and what's not, who is real and who is not. And we picked that up right off the bat. You guys are real, not just, you're not just putting on a show behind the pulpit and behind the microphone because this is your livelihood. This is just who you are. And you've got a real story. You know, the purpose of this podcast, as we're talking earlier, is, there are men and women across the fellowship and across all organizations, oneness organizations, and independent churches that are used mightily in the gifts of the Spirit. But we have a tendency I wouldn't say as Pentecostals so much, but as humans, to see somebody that's doing something at an excellent level and almost put them on a pedestal as if that's unattainable. That's a special, rarefied individual. And not to say that you're not worthy of any honor or respect, because you absolutely are. But that honor and respect is not because of innate abilities through you. It's the honor and respect due you is because you've paid the price. You've lived a life of consecration and honor and separation and being close to God to where God trusts you with certain things. But that's not reserved for a rarefied breed of humanity. That is for the body of believers. Every promise in that book for believers is for whosoever will. Whosoever will pay the price, whosoever will consecrate, separate, and live that life. You've done that, and you've done it very well, and we see the fruits of that. And, we can't say enough good things about you, as much as it pains me. But we do love you guys. We count you among our dearest friends. We thank you for being on with us tonight. And again, if you're just joining us, we have Brother George Hurt. He's not Reverend. And Sister Natasha Hurt, evangelist based out of Indianapolis. They pastored there for a while, but there's more to their story. And we're going to give them an opportunity to tell that story. Brother Hurt, tell us about you and Sister Natasha. Where did you guys first meet?
We met. I was going to say something silly.
Go ahead. I told you we're just relaxing. This is we're not that serious. You know that.
We used to rob banks together. She was my getaway driver.
Everybody used to. Was that last month?
No, but me and Natasha, I met Natasha I came home from prison in 2005. In February of 2005, I met Natasha in March of 2005. I seen her for the first time, March the 11th.
Okay.
2005. Pastor back then was preaching at her church, and I kind of out my peripheral, and but I never really engaged her. But I got a phone call from someone probably about a week or so later, and it said, "George, do you think you ever get married?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Not right now," but I said, "If it's like the will of God," I said, "but I just can't just go with anybody." I said, "It's got to be the right person." I said, "They got to be saved. They got to really be a certain way." And I was like, "And if they're not that," I said, I'm not going to do it." And so I ended up, the person gave me her phone number. And I reached out to her and gave her a call. They said, "Man, I know somebody that I think would be a good match for you." Mm-hmm. And it was a perfect match.
That's good. Now, you threw kind of a hand grenade out there. A lot of people watching may not realize your history. You said, "When I came home from prison." We're going to get into that in here in just a minute. Sister Natasha.
Yes.
When you heard that this man just out of prison was trying to get in touch with you, what did you think about that?
Were you trying to get in touch with me?
He's like, hold on.
Well, you know what? To be honest, I didn't really think too much about it. It's like when I talked to George, when I first talked to him, I just felt like a peace. I didn't feel like, oh, you shouldn't talk to him. You need to leave him alone. You need to get away from him. I didn't feel any of that. I just felt like a peace when I was talking to him, and I trusted what he was telling me was true. I just knew. I just felt peace when I met him. So.
Now, how long did you guys? He swept you off your feet, didn't he? Now, how long did you guys date before you got married?
We got married exactly a year after the day that we first, was it the day we first talked?
The day we first seen each other.
The day we first seen each other. So March 11th, 2005 was the day we first saw each other.
Okay.
We got married March 11th, 2006.
Wow.
So 2 days.
We were actually, we were actually planning on getting married in December, but there were some circumstances and we were advised to wait a little later on. So
her dad was not having it, man. Her dad, she's got the coolest pops.
Yeah.
If anybody's got the coolest pops, my bad.
No, I was just gonna say, he has some concerns about him being fresh out of prison and didn't know him, didn't know what his motives, didn't know what his intentions were.
Right.
And he kind of was struggling a little bit, with the idea that we were going to get married. So we had
as expected though. Yeah.
Well, Natasha didn't tell him that we were talking. She brings me over to the house. We're sitting back watching, he's watching the Pacer game. I'm sitting back, we talking. And I'm like, man, I done proposed to her already.
Wow.
So
wow.
I haven't met the family.
So you bypassed dad and proposed before talking?
I didn't see that in the Bible. So
he just didn't know that was something that was protocol.
I didn't know that. I bypassed all protocol.
Yeah.
So
you didn't see a 12 gauge in that Bible either, but they exist.
I did not. No. But man, we was at the house and we sitting back and we talking about the game. Our pops used to play basketball when he was in the Army and what have you. And so we talking, and next thing you know, she's like, I guess he talked to her like that was a Sunday, and he talked to her like on Monday, and he was like, that George dude is pretty cool. And Natasha was like, cool. She's like, good. And if anybody knows Natasha, she's not very wordy. She's
Right.
very direct. So she was like, good. She was like, good. Because we get married. Oh, yeah, by the way, he just got out of prison 3 months ago. He's got a child out of wedlock. I mean, she gives him the whole rundown.
He just dumps it all out there.
Yeah, her pops worked with the pastor, with the pastor of the church, with her pastor.
Yeah.
He shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when I realized that like Dad had authority.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dad went and talked to the pastor. The pastor was like, he's like, man, this guy, he's crazy and all that stuff. And he did background checks on me. It was back then. It was frustrating, but now it's hilarious.
Yeah, I could have did it better. I could have went about it a better way.
Confession is good for the soul.
Yeah.
You made it rough. If she just would have
She's like, I'm just going to rip it off like a Band-Aid.
But the fact that you live,
she's like, have at it.
oh, we're getting married. By the way, he just got out of prison. He's got another child.
Yeah.
She hit him with the hammer and then brought out the sledge.
And he on parole.
My dad would have been like, no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were kind of put on like a probation almost.
Yeah.
We were going to get married like in December, 6th or around December 6th. Or we were going to get married around December the 6th. And the pastor was like, well, push it off indefinitely. And we just continued. I didn't go nowhere and fell deeper in love. And then she ended up talking to her pastor and talked to her father and all that stuff. And eventually he gave me the pass and walked her down the aisle. And
You want to talk about when you were almost ready to go? When you were almost ready to go?
Oh yeah. Oh boy. I didn't expect you to talk about that.
Well,
Hold on, I want to hear
We
it
didn't
now.
hear that.
Okay.
No, we had to talk
Okay,
about it.
so the thing was, I was like, Natasha was like, she wasn't like, one day I was like, don't nobody know y'all dating. I mean, we date, we call it courting. It's like, don't nobody know y'all really together. And I was like, Natasha, do your people know, like, we still talking? And she was like, I don't know, I think so. My sister know. I said, no, does your pastor and does your father know we still talking? Because I'm like, I'm waiting. I feel like, who's that dude in the Bible had to wait forever for his wife? I felt like him. Jacob. Yeah, I felt like Jacob. And I said, man, you need to talk to your people. Because if you don't talk to them, because, somebody was like, well, you can just let Natasha come. Natasha could come to your church, because my pastor, he was for it. And she was like, well, Natasha come to your church. And I told my pastor, I said, no. I said, if Natasha leaves the church that she's at to come here so that she can marry me, I'm calling it off. My pastor said, why is that? I said, because she doesn't have enough honor and respect for her pastor and her father. She won't have that honor and respect for me. So I called Natasha and I told her, I said, listen, you need to talk to your people. And I said, I know you might be nervous or afraid because Natasha is non-confrontational.
Yeah.
Unless it's with me. She's non-confrontational, but so what happens is that Natasha ends up, I call her, I said, you need to talk to your peoples.
Yeah.
And she ends up, I said, if you don't, I was like, I'm going to have to move. And I didn't know what she was going to do. She called me back in like 10 minutes. Because, Natasha was always kind of like nonchalant, kind of thing. So it was like, you didn't know what she was thinking. And, and she calls me back like 5-10 minutes later and said, the wedding is on. I was like, what? And she was like, no, she was like, no, we're getting married. I talked to the pastor. The pastor was like, you guys are good. Brother Hurt's good. And we met the approval process and we got married exact day from the day we first seen each other.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
And if she would have came to your church, not only you would have called it, but also her dad and her pastor would have been like, no. You know what I mean? Like, don't you think over that as well?
I think other people, the pastor by that time was wanting to go ahead and do it, but he wanted to honor her father.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
He really had, her dad is not like some crazy dude. He's really an honorable, great man.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
No,
So,
nothing you've said
so
sounds crazy to me. Now, I probably would have went a few steps further. So the fact that he had some restraint says a lot about that man.
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
delve into it. You mentioned the fact that you had just gotten out of prison. So how old were you when you guys met?
I was 25. She was, what, 26?
I must have been 26. Yes.
She's a
Okay.
cradle robber.
Yeah.
He's
9 months older.
Robinson. No.
Okay.
Well, so you start, so when you get out of prison, do you start working in the church at all? When do you start? When does that start?
Okay, so the gentleman that baptized me, all right, when I got saved, I got the Holy Ghost before I went to prison, all
Okay.
right? When I came home, the pastor that was there when I got saved had already passed. The man, the preacher that baptized me, he was like one of the ministers in the church. He ended up being voted in as pastor. As a matter of fact, that's Barry Fields' dad.
Okay.
So he ended up being voted in as pastor. And he would come and visit me from time to time. So he was familiar with, the revival and all that stuff that broke out in prison.
Mhm.
So when I came home, he told me, he said, Brother Hurt, he said, the church opened me with open arms. And they were, they all remembered me from when I was there, 6.5 years prior. So they were like, he said, Brother Hurt, he said, everything you were doing in prison, I want you to do that here.
Mm.
So he started, our church at that time had like what they called an instant church.
Mhm.
And he set up sound equipment and all that stuff, and you preach on street corners. Well, I
Oh.
started, I would kind of go out, preach, on street corners for fun. And we would baptize people, people get the Holy Ghost, and, go to the rough side of town and just minister, and people would just kind of come from out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And then I continued in that. And then when we got married, my pastor was like, I want to make you guys a youth pastor. I want you to work over the youth. And then us doing that, I was on parole. I was a youth pastor on parole.
That is so funny. I love it.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
Now that church, the way it was structured, back then, it was like the youth group was everyone from the age of 4 to 35.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so it was a lot, but it also gave me experience when it came down for ministry later on down the road. And so we just, got involved. I was church bus driver, was the bus captain. I also did a lot of the baptisms, ministered, went to the hospitals, went to the nursing homes, went to the jails. Whatever there was a need, I just made myself available to the pastor and to the church.
I love that because
And Natasha, where she was at, Natasha, the church that she came from, Natasha was like, she was already ministering. She was preaching and teaching and all that
Wow.
good stuff. And so by the time she ended up coming over to us, I'll never forget, I kind of got jealous. Like, I'll never forget
she's like,
one
wait.
time, our church back then used to have what they call, what was it called? It was like an in-house revival kind of thing. And it was basically in-house ministers would preach. And they let Natasha, Natasha was scheduled to preach, but she couldn't because she ended up being on bed rest with either Noel or Isaac.
Yeah.
And I think it was Noel. So she ended up being on bed rest. So she could not preach it. But I didn't get a preaching slot. I just got, just give the altar call. So maybe they did that because they knew that she would go shorter and I would go longer.
That's a very real possibility.
She's like the Cliff Notes, man.
She's like, let me run it down for you. It's like this.
I'm not saying
it don't take her long.
Now, for those of you who've never heard George Hirsch preach, I'm not saying he preaches a long time, but I'm saying when they ask for his scripture, he just hands them the Bible and says, "Good luck."
Yeah.
But
Well, I love that. I love that you guys worked in so many different manners and so many different ways with ministry, because sometimes I feel like people get, especially like starting out and doing things, they're just like, this is all I want to do. I just have a burden for this and this is it. And they're kind of tunnel, you know what I mean? Tunnel vision. Like, I just want to be a youth pastor. I just want to work with kids, or I'm not going to do that. I feel like everybody should help. Like you said, wherever there's a need, you should help. If that means vacuuming the floors, vacuum the floors. You know what I mean? Like, because I think it teaches you and molds you. Like what you're saying, I love that you were a school bus driver, or not a Sunday school bus driver. That's getting a lot of people around you as well as the 4 to 35-year-old range. So I think God orchestrates and he'll use that. So like if he sees you're willing to do whatever, right? Whatever manner, he's like, I've got this plan for George. Let's see if he does this, then this is what I'm going to open the doors for this and this for.
Well, the goal is to be sons and daughters of Christ, of God. You know, if we liken it to our own household, I mean, our kids, they do what we ask them to do, whether that's mowing the grass or doing the dishwasher. They're not set to one specific thing. Well, the only thing that Reagan does is polish the handrails on the staircase. No, Reagan does what mom asked Reagan to do. Same way in the kingdom of God. You just make yourself available, Father, whatever it is. And, you know, once he learns to trust you with, hey, I need this done, there's really no limit. Now, I do want to talk about it, and I'm going to let you talk about it in the depth and degree that you're comfortable with without, making you uncomfortable. But we've talked, we've mentioned that you were in prison. So how'd that come about? What happened there?
Because you said you got the Holy Ghost.
You got the Holy Ghost before.
Yeah. Me and Natasha got into a shootout with some people at the bank.
Oh, for real?
You believe that?
This is not the story I've heard.
I was like, wait, for real?
No. I got the Holy Ghost and I was just in a whole lot of trouble. And was in a lot of trouble. And everything just kind of kept stacking up. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that kind of moved me closer to the altar or to pursue the Lord was that I'd already gotten arrested about a few months prior. And then I was getting arrested again. I was wanted for some stuff. And everything just kind of kept snowballing. And before I know it, I am, kind of, in more trouble. And it's like stuff just kind of kept getting worse. I became very fearful, suicidal, wanted to die. And what ends up happening is I eventually, at that time, I had a girlfriend that was a backslider. And I told her, I said, hey, why don't you tell me about this church or this baptism you're talking about? So I ended up leaving and, she took me through the scriptures. The next day I went and got baptized, God filled me with the Holy Ghost about 3 days later. But I was still in trouble,
Right.
Except this time I've got some help. I was doing all right for a little while. But that first year was very shaky, unstable for me. I don't have all the time. I probably one day have to put it down in a book on everything because people, they hear bits and pieces and sometimes people hear something new, but I would probably have to put down in a book someday, the actual um, rundown from start of how things transpired and happened. But by the time it was over with and done, um, I was facing about, I was a four-time convicted, well, ended up becoming a four-time convicted felon. Um, but I was facing about 106 years. I was a habitual criminal. Um, and in the state of Indiana back then, if you were a habitual criminal, um, all of your cases that you added up, I mean, whatever you were charged with, they would multiply that times three. So whatever the maximum sentence was, they would take the maximum sentence and they would multiply it times three.
Yeah.
It really got bad when they took me to another part of the county jail. And when they took me there, I remember being in that part of the county. So I tried to pull an escape and kind of hopped over a wall and all that stuff. And um, took apart the drywall, had a rope, had clothes from the outside brought in, and had a good escape plan. I was fooling with the alarm system, and I looked outside and seen, you know, I was going to pull my escape probably the following day, but I realized that there was construction. There was supposed to be construction still going on, but they opened that road up early. So I was like, if I didn't do it right now, I was going to be able to make the escape. So because I decided to um, try to pull the escape off, and what happens is there just so happened to be a guard outside smoking a cigarette, and he just happened to look up and he saw me, and I was in a part of the jail. It's about 10 o'clock at night. Is even supposed to be in that area. It's supposed to be completely locked down. So when that happened, you know, hindsight, part of me back then was like, I should have just went on ahead and jumped out and took a run and just ran for it. Um, but if that would have been the case, I probably wouldn't be on this call with you. Um, and so what happened was they came in, handcuffed me, took me to IPD processing, booked me on escape charges, which would be 3 to 8 years, but due to me being a convicted felon, that turns 8 years into 24.
Oh my goodness.
2 to 8 years. So by them, yeah, Class C. So that turns that 8 years into a 24 year. And I was just knew that when I was going to come home, cars would be flying. Hole. I was there for 30 days in the hole, and but the Lord just was merciful to me, and I ended up getting sentenced to 14 years. And in the state of Indiana, if you do good with good behavior, stay out of trouble and all that stuff, you can cut that in half. You can do, 2 for 1. And then if you go to school, excuse me, if you go to school, you can, get take some classes, drug classes or something like that. You can get a time cut.
Okay.
So I did that. The Lord told me not to go to school immediately. I could have got out earlier than that, but the Lord told me to stay in the prison because he said that when I came home, told me to stay in the prison, don't get a time cut. He said, I want you to get in my word, learn my voice, and do my will. He said, because when you get out, he said, you're not going to use anything that you would get if you go to Ball State right now. He said, you will use everything that you got from my presence.
Wow.
So I knew that I didn't trust this. I knew I couldn't trust this flesh. And I needed God. There are some people that they can survive in society and do very well for themselves without the Holy Ghost. I needed him.
Yeah.
So it was like kind of like Peter when Jesus looks at the disciples after a bunch of people walk away. They said, "Are you going to leave me also?" And they're like, "How can we? You have the words of life. I wanted to live." And
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted him. I knew that I needed him. So my mother called me one day. My stepmother, no, I called my stepmother. She said, "George, that you can get time cuts and all that stuff. You go to school, you can get out early." And I told her, I said, "Well, the Lord told me not to." I said, "The Lord told me to stay in here." And I had a daughter, at that time. She was like, less than 1 year old when I left the streets. And man, my mother went off. She
Yeah.
said, "You mean to tell me God talking to you? He should have been talking to you. Why wasn't he talking to you when you was robbing folk?
Oh
You should." She like, "You want to tell me you can hear the voice of God?" So she goes off on me, man. And I get it, because I was
yeah.
calling because I was like, "Hey, I need some money on my books."
Yeah.
Well, it sounds funny. And again, if you're just joining us, we're here with Brother George and Sister Natasha Hurt. Share and like this live stream. Share the live stream as much as you can. That sounds funny that she would say that. Was God talking to you? But you're looking back at it and what you're telling us, it very well could have been the will of God for you to go to prison in the first place, because He knew without that time you never would have learned to hear His voice. You probably wouldn't be here with us today. You'd be, if not in prison, you'd probably be dead.
Be dead.
Yeah.
And so, God had His hand on you, even when you were robbing folks and whatever else you were doing. God was right there with you. I believe He kept you safe. He kept you from a much longer sentence. He said, "I got a set time where I'm gonna incubate George Hurt, and I'm gonna grow him and bring him close to me, but I've got to put him in prison to do it." And that'd be hard for a mother to hear. I mean, that'd be hard for a father to hear, or much less yourself. But yourself. You said it. You knew you had to be there. You needed that time with Him. So that was a very mature thing to do at a young age, coming from where you came from.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, please go ahead.
So Natasha, she, she had a dream, Well, tell me about your dream. She was dreaming about me long before I came in the picture. I was a man in her dreams.
I want to hear the dream.
Well, the first dream I had, I just remember there was a man in a prison suit, and I was in love with them. And just telling my dad, how much I loved them, and wearing the prison jumper. And I'm
And
trying to
you're like,
convince my
what kind
dad
of
that
pizza did I eat?
I
Yeah.
really.
No
Yeah, and I think
grandchildren.
I remember a number. I can't remember what the number is now, but I think it was actually his number that he had while he was in prison.
103627.
Wow.
She was in love with 103627.
And then
That is
probably about a year or two after that, I had another dream that like I saw him before I met him, but I didn't remember it until sometime after I met him. But I just saw this, and we were running down the street together, holding hands and stairs, holding hands, and I just remember his face in the dream. Yeah,
It said we just kind
wow.
of kept running. And
yeah,
that's what it's been like
yeah.
since we've been
You're
married.
still running.
Since
You're still running.
Still
Still
running
running. Yeah.
all
Wow.
over creation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm just wrapping my head around all this for a minute. So prison goes by, you guys get married, and then you start working in all the different areas that you talked about. So then when did stuff kind of change or shift? When did it start accelerating? Like what point did things you kind of knew like this is kind of where I need to be doing?
Okay, where we started evangelizing?
Yes.
Okay, so the thing is, when I met Natasha, I was very conscious about the fact of where I come from.
Mhm.
And I've come this far in time by faith.
Yeah.
And and the Lord has and all this stuff, but if that was going to happen, it was going to happen by faith.
Yeah.
So it was like a faith walk, and and in that faith walk, I was really conscious and somewhat insecure, um, because I knew what people thought of me prior to me coming home. I had done some stuff in my life
Right.
that, for one, I didn't feel like I deserved Natasha.
Yeah.
I did not feel like I deserved the second chance. I felt like that I didn't deserve anything. And so because of that, I was always conscious of, what do other people think, what other people feel, and
Right.
all that stuff. But I would speak boldly about what God had given me because, that's how I was able to get from where I was at to where I was at that point in time. I remember talking to Natasha, and I told her on the phone the day that we talked the first time. And I told her, I said, Natasha, I said, I told her everything that God had promised me. And I said, I don't have a lot. And I told her, I said, I'm a 4-time convicted felon. I just got out of prison. I said, I have 2 pair of pants and 3 t-shirts and 2 pair of shoes. I don't have a car. I don't have a job, but I work. And I said, I don't have a lot right now. I've got a child out of wedlock. So I don't have a lot right now. I said, but God has given me some promises.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and he told me that within a year, nobody would recognize I'd ever been in this place.
Wow.
And I said that, I told her, I began to talk to her. I said, God's also promised me that he's going to give me a business. And, and next thing you know, like after I talked about all that, she then looks at, she looks at me, we're on the phone, and she's like, I could see that. And the thing was like, she wasn't, I felt something in my spirit when she saw it. Because it was like, almost like she was like, she did not think like, this is so far-fetched.
Right.
Right.
She really believed God, and she really believed, I'm not going to say just believed me, but she believed what God was doing in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not me, you follow me?
No.
Other people may be like, she believed in you, but I believe that the source of that was God. Like she was talking about peace. She just
Right.
felt peace. That's not me, that's God.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that I still wrestled, I still struggled, because God was using me in ways that were not normal to people that were in my situation and come out of my situation. I was kind of thrusted into, back into, from the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. And I did not fit in the churches. I spent, those years in the scriptures. And I literally, whenever it came down to decisions, I'd quote scripture. It was like there had to be a scripture back. I didn't quote scripture just for the sense of quoting. It was like I did it for direction. Because it was my application of the scriptures that brought about my transformation. So I knew that if I was going to sustain what I've got and get to where I'm going, there has to be that same application of the scriptures. And even more as God begins to give me more scripture. So what ends up happening is I end up eventually, the Lord told me that it was time for me and my wife to leave the church that we were attending. And I went to a church in Carmel, pastored by Brother Ball, Matthew Ball. And when I went to that church, Brother Tisdale was preaching a revival, and Jason Sisko was in revival there. That was kind of like simultaneously all at the same time. Brother Tisdale prophesied to me. Brother Sisko prophesied to me too. there was something that was working in me. I didn't even know I could preach. I didn't know that I had anything. My pastor one day calls all the people, young ministers, to kind of do popcorn preaching. And when I got up, he was like, "Oh my God, Brother Hurt, that was annoying." It kind of shocked him because I was always like extremely mellow and very, very quiet, extremely shy. Most people probably think I'm an extrovert, but that's only because I'm with Natasha. I'm an introvert. And so what happens is that during that time period, I was, my flooring business was doing good. And one day my pastor calls and says, Brother Hurt, I want you to, I want you to go on this trip with a few preachers and pastors. They're going to go visit a preacher in West Virginia. I want you to go with them. I want you to pray on it. And I was like, all right. So I was like, man, I couldn't afford to miss no money. And I really felt like if my pastors are feeling this, I may not want to do it, but this may be God. And I'd already been feeling like God was going to have me travel, but it didn't make any sense at all because I preached, for a couple of churches, small churches in Indiana, but not to the degree of evangelizing full time. I had went to, and I'd also went to my pastor. Said, man, I feel like maybe I'm going to evangelize one day or something. And my pastor was like, well, that's fine. He said, I need you to be an evangelist in the prayer room. I need you to be an evangelist on Wednesday night. I need you to be an evangelist on Sunday morning and Sunday night. I need you to be an evangelist in the altars. I need you to be an evangelist at home. He said, if you do that, you'll be a good evangelist. So I was like, all right. So I'd come to church and I would try to pray everybody through to the Holy Ghost before the altar call, while the song service was going. And I would try to pray as many people through to the Holy Ghost. And I would come to church, I wasn't the one preaching, but I was like, I'm going to minister. I can minister as an evangelist at altars. So in that, and then on top of that, you minister to people, in the workplace and, at Walmart and all that stuff. What ends up happening is my pastor ended up going on this trip with all these preachers. I'm like the low guy on the totem pole. I literally just got off parole. So I want to say that this is like one of my first trips without having to go and call a parole officer. I get there and this big fat dude opens up the door. He's like, what do you guys want? I'm like, what in the world? And I'm like, man, y'all done drove us all the way out here to West Virginia and y'all didn't have a decency to tell this guy.
In the distance.
Huh?
In the distance.
Yeah. I'm like, you done brought us all the way out here and y'all ain't had the decency to tell this dude that we coming? And this is like what's going on in my mind and my spirit. So I jumped in the house and I sat down. He sat down in the chair, and while he sat down in the chair, all the other preachers sat down and took a seat. His wife, she was in the back room, in the back room, and she was, she had a condition that at that time it required her to kind of lay down all day long. And what starts happening is he starts telling us all this stuff, right? All these like stories. I'm like, man, this guy's got some good stories. And like, we're there for hours and he's kind of telling these stories, but something's happening. I'm feeling impartation. Now, the thing is me being, when I was incarcerated, whenever I came in contact with someone that had what I needed, I'd soak it up. So if there was a book or if there was a preacher, I would soak it up and I would apply it immediately. I had a friend of mine, one guy tell me, he said, Brother Hurt, he said, it seems like you're like a sponge. He said, whenever I give you something, he says, it's like it produces immediately. It's like you suck it all up and the fruit comes forth immediately. Well, I was, I had a relationship with God, and there was a lot of things that God did in me, but there were some things that God could not do unless I came in contact with men of God that could impart something to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, after it happened, I end up in they start prophesying to people. While they're prophesying to everybody in the room, I get nervous because all of a sudden there's a shift. One guy looks like he done got rebuked. And I'm like this dude's like, he's like, I'm that guy got rebuked bad. And I mean, it was like, I felt, you ever saw something happen to somebody you embarrassed for them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like that. And I was so nervous because I was like, man, they gonna come to me, they gonna find out, because I was nothing. I had never seen anyone, like I would do some of that, but I had never come in contact with anybody else that did that
Yeah.
on that level. And so I'm experiencing this. And I'm like, man, they're going to get to me. They're going to find out what I did in 95, 96, 97, 98. They're going to go back. They're going to, by the time they're going to call the police on
I'm
me.
going back to
I'm not going
prison.
to make it out of here. So what happens is they minister to me, prophesy to me. And they gave me a word. And the word that I got was probably a word that maybe anybody in that room would have wanted to walk away with. And the word, one of it was a confirmation that God had called me to evangelize. And so I came home and I told my wife, I said, Natasha, I'm going to shut the business down. My wife is a nurse, and I said, in the comments, I don't know when the Lord's going to tell me. I said, you're going to have to come off your job. And I said, we're going to put everything in storage. And I said, and we're going to evangelize full time. There was a gentleman by the name of Don Moore that used to visit me in the prison. He used to actually live on the campground, on the Indiana District campgrounds in Fortville. I was incarcerated in Pendleton, Indiana. He went to Calvary. What Don Moore would do every day after he would come home from Calvary, he would walk from the Fortville campground to the Pendleton prison, and he would have a visit with me. He'd give me he'd stay for an hour. He'd give me a Coke and a Snicker bar. And I would just kind of talk scripture. He was kind of my checks and balances. And I would tell him about what God was doing in the prison. And if I felt like I had some sort of revelation or something like that, I bounced stuff off of him. Well, when I came home, by that time, he had already moved back to Oklahoma, where his father was a pastor, and he took over that church. Well, I called Brother Moore, and I said, man, I went to this fat dude's house in West Virginia, and I said, man, and they've confirmed something that I'm supposed to evangelize. And I've been feeling this. I said, but I was scared to tell my wife because I didn't know. I was still kind of scared about what her father was going to think. I was like, I don't know what her family's going to think if all of a sudden now I just shut down my job, you follow me, and start traveling full time, and I don't know nobody. And Brother Moore said, where was you at? And I was like, I told him, he's like, were you at Billy Cole's house? I said, hold on. I said, he gave me a book. He signed it. Let me look at it. And it was Billy Cole's book.
Oh my goodness.
And this is actually, Billy Cole had said that I didn't know who he was. And I think like a few weeks later, he was supposed to be taking a tour bus, and he was going to go and tour the country. And he said he was going to do one last crusade tour trip. And he was like, yeah, they're going to put he had this recliner that he stayed in.
Yeah.
He sat in. And he's like, I'm going to be in the recliner, and he would travel like that. But it was from that Brother Moore said, Brother Hurt, I want you to come down to Oklahoma and preach me a revival. I went down there and did Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I never preached so many times straight back to back. I was out. That was back in the day Well, you couldn't get but 20 minutes out of me.
It was basically those
20,
4 or
30
5 days like
minutes.
one sermon now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened is that I am I get to like the last day, Natasha got sick, and it's Sunday. And now I've already, Sunday's the last service. And I was so exhausted from preaching that I basically was like, Natasha was sick. I said, man, my wife is at home sick. I really got to get home and take care of her. And I said, you mind if I leave? And I I walked away from that revival because I felt like I had nothing else to preach. I felt like I exhausted the whole Bible, and all of my material, I guess. And what ends up happening is I come back, and it was, revival broke out in that church. And then revival, I went preach for another guy named Johnny Cheek. Johnny Cheek was in Broken Bow, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And Johnny Cheek liked me. And this is, Johnny Cheek really liked me. And Johnny Cheek was like, like me. We had a move of God. And people like, well, man, if Johnny Cheek like you, man, you could preach for anybody because he don't like nobody.
Oh, Lord.
And that's what they said, but he was a guy, he was a man of God, but he didn't tolerate foolishness. So you got some guys that, they'll let anybody in their pulpit. Johnny Cheek, if he lets you in his pulpit, that's a statement right there.
Yeah.
And it was from that we, we went full time off of that revival.
Wow.
That's an amazing story.
That takes a lot of faith,
That's
too.
Huge.
Because you
hugely.
had to basically quit your jobs, right? Shut down the business, quit your job, pack it all up, and then just go.
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't peaches and cream.
No,
And
I
Isaac
know,
was a
I'm
year and a
sure.
half.
But
Sure.
is there any horror stories that stood out?
Just that first year, that first summer, because when we started it was summer and it was just very rough
Yeah.
financially. Our car didn't have air conditioning, and we were like in the South, Oklahoma,
Oh.
Louisiana, Alabama, driving, in the heat of summer. And my son's like a year and a
Hanging
half
your
years
head out.
old. Huh?
Windows down, hanging your head out the window.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just that first year was rough.
We went to General Conference one year and we could not afford to get a room.
Mm.
We could not. We were in the ALJC and we were going to actually meet their evangelist department or something. We were going to get on with their evangelist department, and we could not afford a hotel room. And so we got in town. We had enough for a few days, but not enough for like the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we could not. We definitely didn't have enough room money for the conference hotel. So we got a hotel where the pizza delivery guy can't deliver there.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like, it was basically the crackhead motel.
Oh, Lord.
And and so we got in town and we had to sleep in our car.
Mm.
And we had to sleep in our car overnight. It was probably about 80 something degrees with no air conditioning.
Oh my goodness.
In the middle of Alabama heat.
Yeah.
And it was rough.
Yeah.
And then, but I knew that I heard from God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife, she was with me all the whole step of the way. And then what happened was I went, I ran into some situations I had never encountered, some of the things that I encountered back then, that I believe that it was necessary for me to actually go through. Went to some churches where people were just mean.
Yeah.
And I had never, this was like my exposure to
Yeah.
Pentecost. I was exposed to God, but I was not exposed to Pentecost. And when I found that in Pentecost, I found that people a lot of times can act completely different than God.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's fine as long as, you know, you're Pentecostal. So what happens is that you know, we went through that period, that season, and I remember going to Texas, and I went to Texas, and I was we were all the way in West Texas, and we didn't know, like, we didn't have the money to go. Our stuff was in church, so we didn't have a place to live.
Yeah.
That was another thing Natasha said when I put all her stuff in storage. She says this, I shut the storage door light, plan sealed. She looks at me. She said, huh, I guess we're homeless.
Oh,
No, I said we're officially homeless.
She said, we're officially homeless. It had not registered with me.
Wow.
The foxes have holes and birds have
yeah.
nests, but Georgia doesn't have no place to lay their head. So we were out there, and I remember people saying, you shouldn't make cold calls. And we don't do that, you know, now, but back then, you know, we didn't have no place to go. We didn't have a fifth wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
We didn't have, you know, people would look at us. I had one guy tell me, he said, you know, I don't look at you as a real evangelist. I have a fifth wheel.
Mm.
He said, I pay evangelists with evangelists with no fifth wheels. And so we
What an
dealt
idiot.
with
What
stuff
a
like
mess.
that. And, you know,
I've been
but
like,
it was
go ahead.
necessary. It was
Yeah.
what I needed. You follow me? Because I wasn't doing it for money.
Yeah.
I was doing it
Yeah.
because the Lord called me.
Right.
And I believe that God will test your motive. Your motive is one thing to say something. That's another thing when your motive is tested.
Yeah.
Who you are is not what you say. Who you are is proven through the test.
Yeah.
So what happens was that I ended up calling a guy out of Mount Pleasant, Texas, out of the Clear Blue Prenticeburgs. And I was like, I called him, and I wasn't even in the UPC. And I said, hey, I just felt to call him. I said, my name is Brother Hurt. I'm an evangelist out of Indiana. I'm in West Texas. Right now, I don't have anything scheduled for the next month. And I'm all the way in West Texas. Do you need an evangelist for this weekend? And he said, well, let me think. He said, where are you from? He asked me about my pastor, asked me how long I've been living for God. And he felt something. He said, well, man, you got a fifth wheel? I said, no. He said, you got a family? I said, yeah. He said, what do you got? I said, I got my wife and I got my 1-year-old son. He said, well, I said, Brother Hurt. He said, man, I got an evangelist quarters. He says, like a dungeon because we ain't got no windows. He said, but man, if you don't mind sleeping in the evangelist quarters, man, I'd love to have you this Wednesday. So we drove all the way over there, and he said, do you need a room? You need somewhere to stay tonight? I said, yeah, because I didn't have any money. He said, well, by the time you get here, it should be cleaned up for you. And we got there, and he was like the first, I would say, that treated us like we were gold. Like he treated
Wow.
us like we were like, I'm ready to quit. I'm like, you know, I feel bad. My wife is walking around here looking at us on the prairie, you know. It's like,
Now, let
we're
me just say
looking
something about this man
terrible.
you're talking about, Prentice Burks. I had been connected with him on Facebook, but I never met the guy, never really talked to him. But as soon as we moved to Oklahoma, we went to district conference that year, or no, camp meeting that year, one night, and he comes running up to me, and he, not of all the people, no, there's a great district here, great people in the UPCI, but he's out of Texas, and he recognized me from Facebook, and he come running up and hugged me and shook my hand and said, Brother Wright, I'm so thankful you're part of the same district that my son is now a part of, and took me and introduced me to his son who's pastoring in South Oklahoma. I mean, that's just who Prentice Burks
So,
is. And that guy, he's something else. I love that guy.
so what ended up happening was we ended up preaching for him that Wednesday, and revival broke out. And it was like one of the it was like the best revival we had ever had. We had had another revival, several months before that at a place in Sullivan, Indiana, a guy named Rocky Green. He had passed away of cancer probably, like 2011 or 10 or something. But this revival, it was like Brother Burks was like, he just loved on us as well. He also just really gravitated to my son, and my son gravitated to him. Isaac had his second birthday there, and it was almost like they treated us like
Family.
we would go. Yeah, they treated us like family. I actually felt brotherly kindness and love from them, and it was off of that I was like, okay, we're gonna keep going. If we would not have ran into Brother Burks, I probably would have went back home and went back to doing flooring.
Wow.
Wow. Well, Sister Natasha, we've heard his story. Now, were you raised in church? Is this something you came to later?
Well, I wasn't really raised in church, but my dad's family was in church. My parents growing up were not living for God. They were not saved. But we knew the truth. When we
Yeah.
went to church, we visited the Pentecostal church. So I grew up kind of knowing the truth, knowing how to be saved.
Right.
I was baptized at the age of 9, but not having parents living for God. Then my parents got divorced. Just living life without the godly influences. So I got into stuff that, teenagers do that don't know God. Well, I got to my senior year in college, right before my senior year, and I felt like God started working on me. I just got to a place where I got to a place where I didn't want to be and realized that I needed God. So, I repented and God filled me with the Holy Ghost. And that's when I officially started living for God. I was 21 years old when I was filled with the Holy Ghost and started living for God. So, and been living for God, ever since. So I was saved at the age of 21. I met my husband, I think, when I was 26. So I was single, let's say, for about 5 years, living for God.
So when this was going on with before you met the other gentleman, and was your faith, I mean, obviously, did you believe that you still needed to evangelize? I know what Brother Hurt was saying, you know what I mean? But was this kind of the final straw for you too?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Before we ran into Brother Burks.
Oh.
Yeah, before Brother Burks,
Were you ready to
did
quit?
you feel like this is a final straw as well along with him? Or did you think, no, we can keep going? Or, you know what I mean? Like, were you both at the same point is what I'm saying.
I don't think I felt that way. I just felt like, just kind of a process.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know. I didn't know he
I
was.
didn't communicate.
I didn't know he was
Okay.
ready to quit.
That's what I was wondering.
She just found that out right now.
Okay. That's what I was kind of wondering, because I was like, you know what I mean? Like, if you were ready to throw in the towel with him, you know what I mean, on it, or if you were like, you know what? Because I find with couples, it doesn't even matter, if one is ready to throw the towel in, the other one is like, we can keep going. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
very rare for both people to be like, we're done. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
She's gonna ask me if I come to her about quitting anything or doing anything different than what I've committed.
Yeah.
She's gonna ask me, did the Lord tell you to do that?
Yeah.
That's gonna be the question. It's gonna be like, well, regardless of how ridiculous it is, if the Lord told us tomorrow to go and evangelize for the next 20 years in Antarctica, she'll be right there with her snow boots.
Yeah.
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 As long as the Lord told you to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
She's
way it's
never-
supposed to
She's
work.
never fault me in doing the will of God.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. Now, it doesn't always work that way. Take our marriage, for example. I knew we're supposed to be coming to Oklahoma, she was like, well, God ain't talked to me about this yet. So she had to wait for him to talk to her before she trusted what I was saying.
This is true.
So there's degrees to
Now the
this.
Lord started dealing with her about us. Now the Lord started dealing with her about pastoring before he dealt with me. And I told her, Natasha has these dreams that are scary, accurate kind of dreams. Like the dreams that'll be like, they're prophetically scary. I mean, I'm not saying scary like the spirit of fear, but
Sure.
the accuracy in the dreams. It's almost like it's just too detailed and too accurate. It's like you start feeling like God is over you right now.
Mhm.
And what happened was she started having these dreams about us. There go those hiccups about us pastoring, and in this dream, he was like, "Yeah, we were pastoring," and she was like, "I had my hair natural, and I had this afro." And I said, she kept talking about these dreams. I said, "Natasha, that's the devil.
Oh
I said
God.
those dreams ain't." I was like, I said that's no. I said that's your flesh. I
Yeah.
said, you just want to be some pastor's wife. I said, no, we're in.
Which I did not.
I was like, I said, we're evangelized. This is what we're supposed to do. And then, like, she kept having these dreams. What happened was we ended up down in Abbeville, Louisiana, and Justin Leva was attending the church, Deborah Randall's church in Abbeville. His sister Randall's husband had not too long passed, and she was pastoring that church. And Justin came to me, and he was preaching out, but he wasn't like evangelizing full time. And he comes to me, and he gives me a word from God, and it was so accurate. The word of knowledge was extremely, but then he turns around and tells me, you're going to pastor a church, and he tells me the exact year and told me the revival that I would be in prior to that happening.
Wow.
So at this point in time, I told my wife, and she said, see, I told you. And I'm like, man, I'm going to bypass this. I'm going to block this. So what happened was so when that year came, I was embarking upon that year, I said, I'm getting ready to do something different. We're getting ready to go to California on faith. Because at that time, we had never really been to California. People were like, you go to California, they'll keep you there forever. I said, I know God will never pull me out of a revival to go pastor no church. I'm going to have a revival so tough out there in California that it's going to tie his hands. He's not going to be able to pull me out. What was I thinking? I don't know. So I beeline. I'd go straight out there. I preach in Denver. For Brother Scourin and for Brother Heyman, had some revivals. And then I was like, I told them, they said, Brother Herb, where are you going? I said, man, I'm going to California on faith. Who are you preaching for? I said, no. I said, but revival's going to break out when we get there. We got there. And revival broke out. We were there for a good while. And then we ended up going to Compton. I wanted to go play some basketball at the park. So I went to the park in Compton. And at that time, I had been trying to lose weight. I was way big. And so I had lost, a good amount of weight. So I'm like, man, I feel like I want to go play some ball. So I saw Natasha, and I was like, oh, man, they passed me the ball. So I'm like, I'm getting ready. I hit this move, right? And then next thing you know, I was getting ready to cut to the left. And next thing you know, man, when I do, I hear a pop. My Achilles snaps in half.
Oh my.
Well, what happens is when that Achilles snaps, I couldn't walk. So then I have guys carry me to the car. I go to the hospital, and they were like, they didn't have, they were like, maybe you sprained it real bad. So I went on ahead and I went and preached another revival in Arizona. And when I preached it, this foot was still swollen, still wobbly and all that stuff. I'm walking around on this thing. And the guy that was working in the emergency room said, George, Mr. Hurt, your Achilles is torn. And the way that I know is because I just tore mine. I just had my surgery, and yours looks identical to mine. He said, your stuff is torn. You need to go home. And I went home because Leva said that I'd break out in a revival in Michigan, in the Detroit area. So my job is I've got to stay away from that area. So just stay away from Detroit. Go way to stay away from Detroit, go to California. So I go home, and I'm like, they were like, I'm in the revival. I'm broke out in revival in Arizona. And they were like, well, Brother Hurt, man, come on back. I said, no. I said, man, listen, I got to go do the surgery this weekend. I said, I'm going to go do the surgery on Friday. I said, I got to do the surgery on Tuesday. I'll be in time to preach revival Friday. Natasha's like, George, have you ever had surgery? She's like, you're not getting ready to bounce back like that. So I was like, oh yeah, well, we good. So I had the surgery, and I was like drugged up. It was like I was in so much pain, and my recovery was extremely bad, to the point where the Lord put me on my back for several months. But I was like, man, how am I going to provide for my family? By that time we had a condo and all that stuff. I said, what are we going to do? And then I get a phone call, and guess who calls me?
Detroit.
Brother Hurt, this is Harold Hoffman from Sterling, Michigan. I heard you had a great revival. I've been meaning to get with you. He said, the Lord's told me to call you. I know you had a powerful revival with Dan Mitchell, and I really feel like our church right now is at a place where we can use your ministry. Are you available? And I'm like, I got this foot dangling, and I got a cast on, and I'm on my bed. And he said, all I need you to do is, he said, I'm going to pay you good. He said, but all I need you to do is come be with us on Sundays. He said, I'll pay you like you're here all week. You come down on Saturday night, preach Sunday, and go on back home. And we'll just keep going until the Lord is done.
Wow.
Well, I was in so much pain. My wife had never seen me sit still in one place as long as I did in our entire marriage, then and now. And what happened is I'm sitting in the bed, and because the pain was so bad, I had to keep my stuff elevated because it would swell, and so I had to elevate it. And that's when the Lord starts talking to me and starts giving me vision for the city of Indianapolis.
That's,
You're right
And
back.
I wrote everything down and did it.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of writing everything down,
You try to tie his hands, and he put you on your back.
you can't tie my hands. I'll put you on your back. Speaking of
Wow.
writing everything down, you said earlier that you could put it all in a book. Bro, that's the will of God. You need to be writing a book about
You do.
the entire thing, bro. I'm telling you, that's the will of God. When you said that, I wrote it down.
He did. He wrote book.
Exclamation point, exclamation. You need to be writing this book, bro. I'm telling you. It would reach people that need to hear this story, man. I thank God for the authors that we got in this organization and in Pentecost. But for the most part, bro, they're all coming from the same place, telling almost the same story from the. I love it. We've heard it. We need to hear this.
Yeah.
We need to hear this.
Yeah.
There's so many young men and women out there that don't think they can get to where you are because they haven't heard that story and they haven't had that encouragement. You need to put this down. I'm telling you, you need to put this down.
All right.
And I think too, some people are not going to tell their story because they don't want to look a certain way. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to what are people going to think differently of me because I'm being vulnerable and telling my story? But honestly, it's actually refreshing and needed because I feel like how can you relate to people, or how can people even relate to you if you're not honest with them? You know what I mean? Like if you just tell them, I don't want to hear from someone that has got, maybe a couple things in their life that happen I want to hear the stuff that you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like
we're
the real deal stuff.
we're really good in Pentecost with wearing masks.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
the difference, between a George Hurt and a Rick Wright is George Hurt got caught, and Rick Wright, by the grace of God, didn't.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with countless others who'll never take that mask off and admit that because they're afraid of being judged, not by the sinner, but by their brother. And we don't have enough trust among our brethren to say, this is who I truly am, but look where he's brought me from.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough trust and confidence in our
Right.
brother. But I think, your story and writing a book and telling this gives people the confidence and to stand up and say, you know what? I'm not the perfect guy that I've portrayed my entire life because I didn't want to be, I've got to protect my family, my income, but this is who God brought out of this, and man, we need to hear this. Thank you guys so much for being vulnerable.
What's crazy, or not crazy, but what I is that you had the Holy Ghost and you were baptized, right? Before you went to prison. Is that correct? Baptized as well?
Correct.
Right. So you had the Holy Ghost and were baptized. So I think that people sometimes they're thinking, I done messed up. You know what I mean? I did this, I did that, and they can't pull themselves out of it. You know what I mean? Like they're like, well, what's wrong? Maybe why did I, or people judge or go, well, my God, they should have known, they should have. But at the end of the day, we're still human. We're flesh. We have to die daily. I could go out today and just go on a killing spree. I mean,
She could.
You know what I mean?
She
Like
absolutely
I really
could.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like you're not exempt from, just because you have the Holy Ghost and just because you were baptized does it not make you exempt from still sinning.
Well,
You
even
can still sin,
God
you
forgives
can
us
still
sin.
fall, but you have to die daily out to it.
God forgives us sin, but there's still a consequence for
does.
your actions, and that's it's unfortunate, but no, I shouldn't say that. It's very fortunate. I should say that you got caught because that's where God wanted you for that time,
Yeah.
is to isolate you and, well, not isolate you, separate you.
Separate.
Isolation is
Better
from
word.
the enemy. Separation is from God. That's what
Separate.
happened. He separated you and I'm thankful he did, because you mean a lot to us and our family.
Yes.
You've impacted us. You've impacted. You travel around the world preaching. Could you imagine 25 years ago somebody coming to you say, this 25 years from now, George and Natasha, this is where you're going to be. This is where you would have been. You would have looked at them kind of like they're crazy, just 25 years ago. But
Yeah.
we can't prejudge what God's going to do in somebody's life. And I'm thankful you heard the call and obeyed the call. And I know you judge everything by the word, and you're very careful about what you do. I think you were joking, kind of joking. I'll have to ask her if you were being serious. You were saying one time that you don't even throw away a pair of socks that's got holes in it when she's trying to get you to throw them away because I ain't felt a release from God yet about them socks. But that's kind of.
Was he joking? I feel like he was joking.
Yes, nothing.
Not
Really.
You still got that storage container, don't you, full of socks?
If I don't feel a release, it's happening. Natasha just now went through my drawer and it's like, you don't wear none of these shirts.
You can't fit them
You
anymore.
can't fit them no more.
Yeah.
Why you got them? Well, one of these days I might grow a little bit more.
Oh Lord.
I just did the same thing.
Natasha
about 3
threw
nights
everything
ago.
away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I a hoarder?
Yes. Yes.
I need you to
She
come.
says I'm a hoarder.
I need you to come to Oklahoma, Sister Hurt, and pray that prayer release over her closet.
I'm not a hoarder. we can compare closets real quick and we'll see who the
We'll
hoarder
start
is.
with purses.
Yeah. No, but I love this podcast because I love just hearing everybody's stories. And again, I think that we don't need to act perfect. We don't, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. I'm over it. Natasha knows. We've talked on, Zoom and different things, you know what I mean, with it and just different whatever. But yeah, I just think this is very needed. And I feel like there are people that will absolutely be able to relate You know what I mean? And be like, hey, I thought maybe this was something that wasn't for me, but it actually is for me.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank
Yeah.
you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with us. We love you guys tremendously. I know this has been a great blessing to many and will be even more so. We have a tendency to get a lot more views once it's been up on YouTube and Podbean and Apple Podcasts. It's going to be everywhere within the next day or so. So those of you that are watching or will be watching this live stream, go and share it, get it out there as much as possible. We'll have the link to the rest of it up the next day or so you can share the more edited version of it. But just leave a comment. Tell brother, sister Hurt how much you appreciate what they talked to us about and been vulnerable, just, being real. And I told you they're real and this is just who they are.
Sister Natasha, do you still preach and teach?
Sometimes, yeah. Every once in a while, they're asked to speak, like for ladies, maybe a ladies' event or that sort of thing. So yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. So everybody listening, she preaches and she teaches. So
now their schedule's pretty well booked up, but if you need if you need to get in touch with this man, you can message me and I'll pass your information along to him. I'm sure he'd be glad to hear from you. He's the guy for the hour. You need some George Hurt in your church and in your life. So love you guys.
Natasha Hurt.
You need some sister Hurt.
That's right.
Make sure she comes with him. Otherwise, you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Carries the shot collar. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Again, go and share this and spread the word. Tell everybody they need to come listen to this because this has been awesome. Thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and kill the live stream here.